My wife likes to always say that I'm usually one of the worst people to hire because I usually always hire with my heart and go, I think this person's going to be amazing.
You fall in love with the idea of what they can do at your organization, right?
100%. And usually they always fall short. Who was the first hire or one of the first hires at Big League where you turned around and regretted hiring?
Who's your first hire you regretted?
Honestly, welcome back to Movified. I'm your host, Mark Hirschi, owner of Salmon's Moving and Storage, located in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. And today, me and Stephen Reed are twinning with our matching Movified t-shirts. What's up, Stephen, with ReadyRolls.com, Big League Movers out of Memphis, Tennessee. What's up,
Live
Memphis?
out of Memphis. We're all fired up this week, Mark. Stephen A. Smith talk trash about us, saying no NBA players want to come to us because of the crime. So we're all fired up. Our mayor's all on it. We're
really?
inviting to the city.
Geez.
So I know Stephen A. Smith, big Movified listener. If you're listening to us, we'd love to have you on the podcast, talk about your Memphis beliefs. Our crime is down in the last 2 years. We would love to have you come here and have all that charity money and help us out fighting this crime a little more too. So we invite you to the city. So I know you listen to Movified. We listen to your podcast. It's a mutual thing. Come on board with us next Wednesday.
Come on board. I love it. You know, it's been some interesting times right now. We were just talking before we jumped on air, and geez, man, I feel like the last 6 months have just been intense with travel, intense with life, intense with just really everything. I would think
you're winning though. You're winning. You're battling.
We're winning.
You had a plan going into the year, and Mark, I gotta say, you're knocking it out. So I'm proud of you, buddy, on that side.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks. And you kind of scaled back. You kind of really like honed in on what was working, what wasn't. And I mean, how's it going for the month of June for you?
It's good. It's good. I'm really enjoying it. Got some surprises. You know, my guys, the college dropouts, as I recruit, right? They're smart. So kind of plugging some holes. We had some DOT problems. So I think I told you before, you know, American reference, but I'm over here like Nancy Reagan right now. The war on drugs at our office, and kind of noting that that's a good role for me in the upcoming Junes is to really, hey, DOT's watching us. We're doing a lot more volume through the DOT stations, right? I got my dispatch team really alert to gas stations next to dispensaries after they leave our office in other states. And so I kind of found that was an issue. They would be at a gas station. They'd walk over after we've checked their bags. Have you know me with the most thorough process there is. After we've checked their bags, after we watch them go out of town, because you can't stop at a place, we're watching you on the GPS. Guys were able to get it at gas stations. Guys were able to get marijuana at other places. So had a couple of dings, and we're on it. And I have a nice campaign on the war on drugs going on.
I love it. Big campaign on the war of drugs. Very, very 80s reference to that. And
yeah, for the younger Movified listeners, look that up. Just look up war on drugs, and I think the first picture will probably be Nancy Reagan at a press conference.
It's an interesting matter because I remember back in the day, you know, before marijuana became legal in British Columbia, it was always a thing that you were constantly watching the guys, making sure they weren't, you know, trying to smoke a joint on a job, on a shipment that was going out of town. And especially when we were doing cross border, you know, you didn't want to have any kind of illegal drugs on you. When it became legalized, it's almost one of those things where, at least it happened a lot in BC, it became the norm. You know, people really could care less. People, you know, it's one of those characteristics that we all love. When we know something is not allowed, especially when we were kids, you know, oh, you don't get into the liquor cabinet. You know, mom and dad are going to find out. You know, you're kind of sneaking around, making sure that you can get that malt liquor, you know, and the and those fake driver's licenses to make sure that you can go pick up some booze.
By the way, I'm not drinking malt liquor. This looks like I think I drink this all the time, so I want to make sure Everybody doesn't think I'm just buzzing midday Wednesday at the office, but I drink. This is water, Liquid Death. Hopefully, there'll be a sponsor of Movified Wednesday soon.
Well, as I finish this segment off, it's one of those things where
Malt liquor.
now a lot of the times we just don't see it anymore. We really
Yep.
don't have that issue, in our office, on our crews. It's
That's
really
nice.
been, and it's one of those things that you're doing right now. It's really laying down the law and being strict on a no drug policy.
You got to have everybody on the full front. You got to have everybody together. I mean, that's what I've really been doing. It's you don't win it in one day. You win it at dispatch, smelling a guy out and confronting it. Right. You win it by not saying, is that just a bad smelling skunk? Right. You win it right then saying, hey man, I'm going to let you know you smell like it. And what are you doing? And that's part of your fight. You win it by the dash cams and really checking. You win it by making sure there's no ashes in the truck when they come back. Right. Because that's a sign. If you're letting them smoke, they're smoking weed too. Right. If you're letting them smoke a cigar. Right. And so you got to do those little things. It's everybody on the same front. And that's what we had in alignment. And then I noted it every year. We're going to be, almost doubling up trucks this time of year. Let's get together right before and just make sure we're all aligned, syncing it all together, right? My dispatchers, my guys that handle the launch in the morning, the guys that are checking the trucks and weighing them, right? All these things, we got to get everybody on the same degree and know how important it is. And that was the big lesson that I've had 2025 peak season so far.
Now I just want to shift it. We're not even really getting into what we want to talk about today, but
No,
you mentioned
but yeah, I'd jump it off.
You mentioned Liquid Death, which I found really interesting because, when you go to a convenience store like a 7-Eleven, I remember starting to see these cans everywhere, and they weren't cheap either. It's not like your quick bottle of water that you can pick up for 99 cents. It was like a couple dollars to buy one of these cans. But
I get them off Amazon. Just so
well,
I get a deal.
which is great, and which is great. But what's interesting about Liquid Death, and if people haven't heard about this, I suggest that you Google it to listen, because there was a gentleman that decided to create Liquid Death, which was just a canned water, really. And it was because he would go to a lot of concerts or events, and he didn't drink alcohol. So
and everybody would ask.
And everybody would ask. And so he decided to create this can that looked very much like a can that you'd want to drink in an event. It looked almost like a can of beer. And it eventually became so big. The company now has a valuation, I think, of like over $1 billion. Which is wild.
Can somebody else make canned water? I mean, I love the canned water because it's the coolness. Like in the refrigerator, it's so cold and crisp when you drink it. So I do like it more in a bottle. But can a grocery store not make a home brand? Like, can we not? Why is Liquid Death owning the?
And this is where it kind of gets into, like, even in the moving industry, when you can find and you can market your brand, right? You're marketing your moving company in such a way that at the end of the day, you might not think, okay, well, the value of my company has went up, but the value of what you provide has went up by having the clean cut guys, by going through these systems that me and Stephen are talking about, by going through and making sure that you have organizational charts, which is what we're going to touch on today, about how you grow a company by putting these key fundamentals in your business. The value of who you are as a company skyrockets. People then really want that service. And don't be cheap, right? This can isn't cheap, and it's just water. I mean, let's be real. It's a can that looks pretty, has a cool design, but it's just water. And for us, when we look at the different cities that we live in, where there are 10, 20 different moving companies that customers can choose from, they're going, yeah, but you're just a mover. But when you have something, when you've built that brand, when you have something that people want, they're all going to seek after that. And that's also good marketing. That's good branding. That's having a good culture. All of these things play into a factor, but it really also can start with who you have in the roles that those key players play within your organization. That's right. Stephen, we've talked about your story and starting with like $1,000 loan and just kind of building up Big League Movers, expanding over
Shout out to
Atlanta.
Nana.
Shout out to Nana. Thank you, Nana, for helping. Thank you for helping out. But what was one of those key roles, the role or structure in your org chart that drove that growth?
Getting out of the trucks, right? I worked for the moving company. I was on the trucks out of necessity at the beginning, right? But I was never planned to be in the trucks. It was only when somebody didn't show up or something else happened, or I wanted to go to a cool city, right? But I never planned to be on the trucks. I learned moving on another moving company, right? So my ambition was never ever to be on the truck. So that was very key to me, because every hour that I had moving trucks out, I didn't stop working. I didn't go to the bar. If I had my guys out, I wanted them to know I'm right with them and have that same respect, because I wasn't moving. So any hour I had, and at first, then there's not much moves. There's a lot of time to find more moves. Right. So I just dedicated my time to always finding another move until my guys got back. So I didn't go to the bar. I wasn't dating. I was committed to this business and committed to finding more while my guys were moving at the beginning. So I was the first key role, I guess, that jumped us over in that side. And then my first progression, as soon as I did, because that happened fast. Once I dedicated myself to finding more work, right, with no money, you figure it out. Right, you get creative on how you get those jobs. And my first hire from that was, I'm administratively weak. I'm ADHD. Right, I recognize that. And my first hire was admin. It was an office manager. That was key for my organization. Hey, how do we handle the money? How do you handle the billing? How do you pick up my holes? I'm going to go be the hell of an operator and a hell of a salesperson. But I need you to catch everything as I'm doing it. And that was my first kind of key role that I hired. Shout out to Lindsay.
Shout out to Lindsay.
Before we ever started using a moving CRM, someone asked me, could you 10x what you're doing right now with the current systems and processes you have in place? And I said no. And so he was like, well, then you need to just pull the trigger on the software. And then I saw Smart Moving, and it was game over.
Austin joined thousands of moving owners on Smart Moving in 2021. Since then, he's more than doubled his business.
And I always compare Smart Moving to Apple products. It's just so simple, so easy to use, and that's really what's allowed my team to scale and now have 2 branches. And last year we scaled Central Coast Moving over 50% growth.
If you're ready to turn your moving company into a machine that drives profit, not chaos, try Smart Moving.
I think that's key, especially when, for those that are listening and you're kind of starting off, you're really trying to get to that $1 million mark. You're constantly on the truck and you're trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? Why am I constantly on the truck? And a lot of people will turn around and go, oh, I need to hire a salesperson, or I need to hire an operations manager, it's like an operations dispatcher. And me and you have talked to Brian Slater from New City Moving, where, he said, unless you are getting to that, $5-6 million stature in your business, you really do not need a dispatcher. You should be still sitting there kind of dispatching, but that's your man. But you have to kind of define what
he said
that
GM,
role
I
looks
think,
like.
on that.
Yeah, I think, it could, and it could have been a general manager. Yeah, you're right, a general manager.
But so hey, Mark, I gotta just share dispatcher, and you and I talk to a lot of movers. We're blessed to talk to a lot of movers, being the know of what's going on in the industry. But man, dispatcher is used so many different ways. I hear people describe a dispatcher as a salesperson, and then people describe a dispatcher as I use a dispatcher's quality assurance. That when you hear me, my term, it's quality assurance and making sure the movers go. Everybody has a different definition of a dispatcher. But I get what you're saying, the head of the realm, the person sending the movers out, the person who's that main contact that's kind of running the show, scheduling your guys. Why is Brian saying that? The money. Right? You got 2 spots right now. You're trying to make sure your revenue grows while your cost is going down, and learn it at the same time before you teach somebody. I think that's very key. You have an interesting history. I don't know if all of our listeners know this, because we talk about your current company, right? But you started in 2 different worlds. So you went from action movers, independent, right? Got into a smaller moving company, took over day one. You were working there before, so you kind of knew what you're going into, but you're stepping into that leadership role. And then later, you went to Salmons right now, where you bought that company and came into a van line Atlas structure that was completely different in your world. So my main question, how you how you can evolve into it. And I promise I'll be quiet for a minute on this one. But I want to know how you took from what you learned at Action, and then that as you took over at Salmon's, this larger company that's already had this corporate structure that's been there forever. What did you bring over in roles? What did you change on that org chart? So,
Well, it was interesting because at Salmon's, our focus, or my focus always was, I've always been really good at sales. So I used to always, be a strong point where I was the face of the company. We all hear it, right? Because we're starting out our company. Everybody's going to know who Mark Hirschi is. Hey, he's the owner of Action Movers. People are going to know who Stephen Reed is. He's the owner of Big League Movers, because we typically are the faces of the company, especially as we're going. And ideally, what you want to do is not be the face of the company. You want to have somebody else that is really the face, because if you ever look at an exit strategy, a lot of the people that are coming out to buy your company want to know that the company is going to be sufficient or self-sufficient when you leave. Because a lot of the times when you talk to someone, you go, okay, well, who's the main point of contact? Well, I am, but you're not going to be there anymore. Oh, don't worry. They're going to still want to do work with you. Typically, that's not even that never happens. Right. They're going to have this whole adjustment period. They're trying to get used to you. And so for myself at Action, the two main areas that I knew I needed was someone that was going to be in charge of the operations, the day-to-day. If I wasn't there in the office, someone was managing those crews, making sure things were going out. A lot of times it was a combination of being a dispatcher and operations, because you were getting the guys out, but you were still making sure the trucks were taken care of. The guys were getting out. People were being hiring, and we were still sitting at that 1 million to 1.5 million revenue. So there was never a need to kind of expand out of that reach where I needed to have dual roles. And at that time, I didn't even know what a VA was to try and have that, taken off the operations manager's plate. And then the other one was, like is to kind of have that office admin that was handling with all of the other stuff. And so from there, it was a small 3-person team, and you kind of allowed yourself to be into the thick of it. Like you, Stephen, it was one of those things where I was dating, but not so much. You were constantly being pulled out. We had delivery accounts. I was always trying to make sure that my guys knew that I was readily available to jump on a delivery. If I had to at 10 o'clock at night, they could always reach me. I wasn't out there, hitting the bars and enjoying life. I was trying to grow my company at the least amount of expenses that I needed to put out there. But what I did learn is when I took over at Salmon's, when you're going from only having 3 people, it's very easy to have that right-hand person that you're talking to every day, and you're always in the office. So the idea of saying, oh, I'm a good communicator. Well, that was a huge difference when now I walked into an office that had 12 staff. And a lot of times I would only lean to my office manager. Hey, hey, guess what? I'm going out here. I'm doing this. And in reality, I needed to make sure
putting all the
it
weight
was
on that one
communicated.
person you count on. Yeah.
And I thought, because that's kind of what I walked into. So it was a real quick realization for me to know, okay, as my office is growing, and for those that are not just jumping from, a small company to a large company, and they're growing, the essence of being a good leader and being good at communicating is huge. And I found that very fast, where I need to make sure that I'm communicating to all my staff. I'm making sure that and that's really, where it came down to having an org chart was so necessary, because you need to make sure that as you are giving information to one person, that org chart can define all the different people that need to know about that one job or need to know about that one issue. Sometimes it's not like you have to send out an email or communicate with all 12. You're not just having to communicate with one person. You better make sure that you have 2 or 3 other people CC'd in it, so everybody's in that loop.
I think I point out something you said there. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off because we don't get too far off, because I want to park you right there on something you said that was really excellent. That adjustment that you made is what I made real time, right? I shifted and I launched and I blew up, right? And so that whole shift to where you went from that's where sometimes I got to really think about what I call the learning years, right? Because I blocked out some of them because I was just intensely with a fire hose, like, let's go. But I had that same drop. And what you don't know, what the biggest thing to learn is, and I had to pay a consultant to help me learn this, is when you're adding staff and you're not a great communicator, those aren't tools. Those are things that are hurting you. Right. So when you have more employees, every one you add that you're not ready for yet is a lot actually more work for you and not a success rate for them. So that whole shift that you took, I'm interested to hear how you did it because it was already laid out. So it may have been a little better for you because people were already in that structure that you came into. Maybe not.
What I found was it took me definitely a minute. It took me months. And I'll be honest with you, 7 years later, there are still times where you still miss the mark. There's still times where, as the owner, as in that leadership role, I still will send off an email and go, oh, I totally forgot to CC that person,
Yep.
and now,
Still getting used to it.
that wrath kind of comes into you, and it's gone a lot easier now. And that's where, I really respect the fact that having companies like Ready Rolls, having companies like Halu, all those VA companies that are out there that offer the assistance, have those key players in your organization.
Pick up your players. Yeah.
Shout out to Daryl, who's my EA. I mean, he picks up so much of the slack that I miss because I'm dealing with multiple phone calls. I'm dealing with multiple emails, multiple situations and meetings, and there's things that get missed, and he's always on top of it. So,
and that's key.
You really need
and
that.
That's you really do as you're showing around. It's kind of almost like a chief of staff. Who's your communicator that helps you make sure everybody's in the know of what you have or what you miss on that side. So shout out to Daryl. Shout out to Chris.
For sure. 100%. And Chris is amazing too in
She
your
is.
organization. Steve, here's always one thing, right? And I find this all the time. My wife likes to always say that I'm usually one of the worst people to hire because I usually always hire with my heart and go, oh, I think this person is going to be amazing. Right.
That's
we do it all
right.
the time. Right. And I,
You fall in love with the idea of what they can do at your organization. Right.
100%. And usually they always fall short. Who was the first hire or one of the first hires at Big League where you turned around and regretted hiring?
Well, I'm an operated-minded person, as I think all of our listeners know. Right. And so I made, my buddy came over. It was a situation, the perfect hire. He really helped me and took over sales on initial side. So I didn't have money for him. I knew it was a talent. He had gotten laid off from his job. He called me. He's like, hey, I want to do some moves. So I'm in between things. And I made a spot. I said, hey, let's try the sales thing. I think you can give me some ROI and help me out on this side. So I made a hire after the office manager. I made a hire for Jonathan. Shout out to Jonathan and Bo before Jonathan. And I was always really strong on the sales side. That was my first main right arm. Right. But then, my operational excellence, where I just learned there's some turnover there, is really, really underestimating. Somebody really needs to go through my system to understand my expectation. And so I kept throwing in some, like, all my sons, beep. Sorry if I shouted out company, but, a general manager from there as my operations manager. And I was spending more time trying to talk about my philosophies than all my sons and trying to rework somebody. So I hired a 2-minute a truck operation manager. Beep. If you need to beep that out. That was mistakes. Those are big mistakes. They had the idea of what they thought moving was, and mine was different. I didn't want to be like them. I don't ever want to cancel a customer on the day of the move, and I'm never okay with that, right? And I'm not going to argue with an operation manager that thinks that's okay. And so those are the things that I had a lot of, I'd say turnover until I just said, you know what, my time is committed in my best driver and developing this man who already knows all the faults of me and demands of me and the standards. That's the guy that I need to work on duplicating me on that operation. So it took me a little while. I had some tough gambling of people trying to bring in an expert from another moving company and didn't really mesh well with my standards.
Being found on the second page of Google is literally like having a billboard in the middle of the desert. Your mama ain't gonna see it. No one's gonna see it. You're on the second page of Google, no one's going to call, no one's going to book. Here is the deal. If your business is not ranking on the top of Google, that means your competitors are going to be stealing your customers every single day. So at Rotate Digital, we don't play any guessing games. We use data-driven SEO strategies to make sure Google finds you first so that these Google searches turn into your customers, not your competitors' customers. How do we do it? We do it through AI-driven keyword optimization, exclusive blog networks, backlinking strategies, and honestly, the secret stuff, the proprietary lead attribution software. So what do you get as a result? You get not only good marketing, but now you get clarity into what is bringing you more revenue. So if that's something you want to do, you want to make sure your leads find you and not your competition, go ahead and go to rotatedigital.com, schedule a call, and we'll help you take your business to the top of Google.
Are you a mover looking to make an impact? Discover Moving Letters AI and join the ML Plus Club today. Elevate your customer engagement with the personal touch of handwritten letters.
If you want to take your company to that next level, it's the only way to subscribe. If you're doing anything but Moving Letters AI, you need to get on it. So it's going to take your business to that next level. You're going to see an increase in that revenue. Let's go.
I highly recommend using this company. They're amazing to work with. They even send you an email on how much work they're producing for you.
Don't miss out. Join the revolution and start making moves that matter.
Put a golden damn ticket in there with Moving Letters AI.
How have you, we hear it all the time, when you put out an ad to hire someone, especially when it comes to a management position or a strong position within the moving organization, and you go least passive resistance. It's great when they understand moving. It's great if they came just from another moving company because they have that experience. It's going to speed up training a lot faster. And then you get the flip that says, nope, bad idea. Let's just hire someone that we can train and mold within the organization that maybe just has some of the foundation of what we're looking for. Pros, cons. You mentioned a couple cons here about hiring those from other moving companies. Do you find like that's always been a pinpoint of going, nah, it's not worth it?
It has been. I have not had any success from that, from somebody coming from another moving company. And I've probably hired almost double digits in my almost 20 years now on that stuff.
If you're listening to this, share your comments on it. I'd love to hear from other moving companies, what your thoughts are on this, because it's something that is an ongoing conversation that we have with a lot of moving companies on how they're doing their hiring process. So definitely share your comments. We'd love to hear on that one.
Who's your first hire you regretted? This didn't do what I thought it was going to do.
You know what's interesting is when I started hiring people for sales at Action Movers, I found that the role that I defined or the expectations that I had was more of how I did things and how I wanted to have it run than having it properly laid down on paper. Like I was one of those people that just constantly, everything was in my head and I was just making it up as we go. And so if they weren't achieving these goals or the expectations that I had, because yesterday I thought of it up and said, hey, great, like we're going to change this or do this. There's that ADHD model where just the brain's constantly going and wants to shift and change. It would frustrate me and I just want to like fire them. And it really wasn't their fault. To me, it was more of I wasn't training them from the beginning and really laying out the roles effectively. It was more of, shoot, we really need another salesperson. I want someone to do a little bit more business development. While I'm either going out to network or I'm trying to step back from the sales role and find that new phase.
A good one too. I could easily say business development. I'll say that too. That's a good one. Because I've had a couple of great business development. I've put all my energy in, putting my strategy in there, and then a mortgage company has way more money than I'm getting return of on that business development person. So that's a good point.
And it was one of those things too, and I'm going to raise on a couple different hires that we talk about. And I remember having this conversation actually with Chris Sweet from Swamp Rabbit. Shout out to Chris.
What up, Chris?
It was I took over Salmons and I realized the need to increase more sales. And I was recommended through my wife, a friend of hers whose husband had great charisma. He was a very good go-getter. He, it was one of those, he's got a pretty face. He's good talking to people. He has good networking and good connections. This would be a perfect hire for business development. Like, get out there, generate that business, everything else. And what I realized fast was it was one of the worst hires that I ever did, because every time you talk to him, it was, I'm working on this new client. But nothing was really closing. And the moment he finally did close a client, and it was an Old Navy job, actually, we got a contract for Old Navy, the experience level backfired. He was more concerned on wanting to make sure everything was handled effectively, that he, instead of taking the training and everything that we put into him, and I was kind of letting him lead the way, because I didn't want to ruffle those feathers. Again, it's like hiring people, hiring friends, hiring the people that you know, where I said, okay, it's all yours. This is your baby. And it totally went sideways, and eventually end up losing an account. Is choosing those type of individuals worth losing those $100,000 accounts? It's not.
It's not. The moving is just brutal too. A lot of people think it's easy. Like, when people sign up for a moving company from another job, friends included in they think it's a breeze in the first week. They're like, whoo, I didn't know this was this,
Right?
No matter how much you try to equip them.
No,
they think it's
sure.
just you show up in a box truck and you get going. It's like, no, to do it right, you got to check a lot of stuff, have a lot of systems.
100%.
Or not a lot,
I
but
totally
run
agree.
the systems.
The other big hires that I regret doing was really hiring family. I had my sister at one point was hired at Action Movers, and I think I fired her twice. On separate occasions. And
what holidays were after?
Oh, I know exactly, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's one of those things where you have your skill set, you have yours. It's just not going to work. As bless her heart, love my sister, it was not worth the headache.
No, your relationship's important.
Totally. Another time, I hired another family member for the front desk receptionist. I thought, hey, this is not brain surgery. It's pretty straightforward. And you think when you hire family, and I'd love to hear what other people's thoughts are on this, but it's one of those things that, it was funny, actually. I was just listening to a segment from Arnold Schwarzenegger where he was on a TV show, and he talked about immigration, and talking about being a guest, right? When you go to someone's house, Stephen, I don't know about you,
same interview.
Did you? For me, it's about being, when I'm at a guest house, one of the things I was always brought up to do is that if I was staying at someone's house for more than one night, I always brought a gift, whether it was a thank you card, whether it was flowers. I mean, even if I'm visiting someone's home for the first time and we're invited for dinner, we're usually bringing something. I like to bring dessert, a bottle of wine.
That, yeah,
exactly.
I'm the same way.
And to me, it's, when you stay at someone's house, I always used to make sure the bed looked exactly the same way. Even though if I knew they were going to wash the sheets after, I would always try and make it look like it was as if nobody stayed there, and was always very polite and kind, and adapted to what their expectations were. If you're quick at adapting, you can kind of see of how they run their household, or wherever I was staying. And to me, when I hire family, or if you hire someone that is within your family or friends, there should be this respect level of going, I want to go and do 120%. I'm not even going to do 90%, not even 100%. And I found this very fast with a family member I hired for receptionist. And every time I'd look over, they'd be on their phone, or half asleep, or showing up late to their job. And eventually,
it was not their dream. Right. It
wasn't exactly 100%. Right. And I mean, I quickly realized that the position that I put them in was not what they wanted to do. They were just, pleasing the family. And now they're in the
also
perfect role that they
thinking
wanted
they can't
to.
get fired, and they're helping out.
Of course.
Totally. With that mindset as well. I've never, I've hired, I guess, a distant family member that didn't go well. But I've stayed away as much as I can from family. But friends, I've done all the friends you could think of. I think every friend I know has worked at Big League Movers at some point. My network has gone in sales and moving for me, and
for
working.
sure.
If you're considering Snowball, just do it.
Snowball creates done-for-you referral programs for moving companies so you can turn happy customers into new revenue without lifting a finger. And the results speak for themselves.
In less than a year, we've collected over 2,000 referrals.
We generated over $200,000 of revenue that cost about $5,000 to do it.
I believe we had 4 or 5 the very first day.
The companies winning with Snowball are the ones that already care about their customers. We just help turn that into new business through human outreach and customer nurturing.
Snowball is part of the arsenal of tools that I recommend to my clients because it works.
Now, talking about org charts, I mean, org charts are really clarify the tasks that are at hand. They're an amazing tool to have. When we talk about the 2 different companies I had, for me, I always looked at organizational charts as the bank or my accountant wants to see an org chart. And I'd be like, oh shit, I better quickly go make one up. Here you go. This is what it is. And when I came over to Salmon's, having a large organization, I found it key to have one. But
so
as
everybody
owners,
understands what you're supposed to do.
We tend to make it and put it away. And a lot of us also don't even share it with the rest of our staff so that they're also aware of this organizational chart. So they have that as a reference and a pinpoint, especially on new hires as well, too. I almost feel like that should be part of your hiring package so that they have that at your desk to go, oh, okay, this is the structure of the business. This is where I sit and this is who I report to.
And that, I think that's so important. I think this, Mark, but in our onboarding for ready roles, that is something that we are teaching. We are getting you to walk through real quick on a 30-minute interview on day 5. Even if it's one person, if it's 50 people, verbally tell us their org chart and roughly what they're due. And we're going to set up a org chart because we know how important it is as a chief of staff, as everybody is growing, to know and keep up with that and make sure everybody gets that on that side. So that's one of the things we do. And just recognizing that, I wanted to mention, like, that's so important that I want to import that in every company. And that's the way I'm doing it. That's a ready roll client is that org chart tells everybody the picture of who to go to instead of you. If you don't have the org chart, the bottleneck is going to be you. They think you are everything besides their role.
Do you usually typically have like one task that you have reassigned to like boost efficiency, speed up the system, where you've made that org chart and then realized, wait a second, we can tweak this or change out that task?
I'm all the time tweaking that. My org chart's always evolving. And as there's holes, our continuous improvement, if you will, we're updating those org charts. And that's why it's so crucial. Like my assistant is in charge of that, because I'm talking to her every day. And that's who keeps up with it at our org, updates it. I'm the brainchild, I'm the visionary, right? I see a problem. I see the future of a product we want to sell. I've made a lot of changes to my org chart to evolve over time with the VAs and AI as we're rolling through in this past year. And I've really, really dove in my org chart, and I've set it up because we're so diversified, because we do the logistics, the delivery, the final mile, not just the white glove. We also, we'll deliver for Sally's and things of that nature to their stores. But we kind of set up like an HVAC company. My brother, shout out to Brian, not sure if he's a Movified listener. He should be. Which is a test. Make a comment, Brian. Prove you're a brother that listens to your brother's podcast.
Prove your loyalty. Your loyalty.
YouTube, put a comment. Brian Reed, we're looking for it. But no, my brother, he runs a HVAC company, which, man, big brother, I get to see what he goes through. A little ahead of me. He's 4 years older than me, has a great company. But really I'm close to them. I've watched how they've grown compared to the moving industry. And I've set up my org like a home services / HVAC company, right? I've got different departments. I have my administrative staff, right? My administrative staff handles, my office manager has a whole crew under her. Elaine, shout out to Elaine. A lot of people talk to Elaine. I'll I'll say I'll walk in her office and she'll be talking to Mark or something. Example. So I know Elaine's well known. So shout out to Elaine. But she has her team under her. That's all of our administration team. She has an HR manager under her, a VA, of course. We couldn't afford it any other way, right? But we have an HR manager. She has an assistant that manages a HR manager. We have a level 3 bookkeeper under her, right? And so she has a little team where she's able to handle the administrative half and then go watch her kids play baseball when she's done with work instead of trying to crunch the numbers, right? And so I have a department that's my call center. So just like a heating and air and plumbing company, right? You have a call center, it's not operations manager doing the calls, mid-move check-ins. There's a system where every day they know that they don't care what service they're providing, there's trucks out and those guys need to go to the next route. And so we set up a call center manager, again, VA, right? I have a customer care under that call center and I have a sales strategist under that call center. It's both VAs. Under the sales strategist, right, I have 2 assistant to sales. Under the call center, on the call center manager, you have the customer service who handles claims. Under that person is 2 dispatchers. And so they handle everything that's on that trucks. They handle any overages on sales, right? It's set up just like Tommy Mello's company in that regard, right? And so I go over to where it really gets different in the moving and the HVAC industry is they have service managers. So in an HVAC company, right, you have air conditioning, heating and air, and there's usually 2 different kind of workers. There's a guy who does service and there's a guy who does installs. They're not one and the same and they're not trained the same way, right? So you have really 2 different companies within that a service company operates. Then you go over to the next side, you go plumbing. Right? Most of these companies, are HVAC and plumbing. Same thing. You have installs and you have service. The guys that are installing your water heater are not the guys that are unplugging your toilet. So there's 4 different staffs that are managed, 4 different teams. And so the way I have it set up is I have a ops manager. Think of the same thing in their world as a service manager. He's in charge of everything that is service execution and movers. Right. So under him, he has a residential supervisor. What does the residential supervisor do? He's in charge of all the new teammates and the 1 truck drivers. Right. But he also gets shift to shift with the other guys. So he's a lookout on the other side of the staff while the other guy's off. And then we have a specialty supervisor. He's under the service manager again. Right? Specialty supervisor, what is he in charge of? The specialty jobs, the advanced movers. After George, my residential supervisor, toughens them up and says they're ready, he plugs them over to the specialty supervisor and a part of his staff. And that's when we're going over pool tables, how to manage movers, how to run 2 trucks, 3 trucks. And then the next thing is I have a logistics supervisor. That guy's in charge of the 12 delivery guys that we have. Right. Next department, I have a warehouse manager, completely separated from the service department. If there's anything incoming or outbound or anything involved in that warehouse, that's the warehouse manager, and he has his crew. And that's how I have mine set up. I have I missed out. So you heard the call center, but then I also have my actually on-site sales guys, and they have 1 executive assistant. So I have a sales team lead. Shout out to Connor. He's in MIT mode, manager in training. Right. And he has an executive assistant that is an executive assistant for all his guys. And that call center sets them up for appointments. So those are my non-VA sections. So all these different departments are how I'm segmented. And after 17 years, that's how I've decided to segment my organization, because I realize I run more like an HVAC service than I do a moving company as far as how we operate.
Which I like. It actually makes me think more of those that have office relocation divisions, and you have the service side, so the moving side of things, and then you have the install side of things, where you have the steel head case, so all of those cubicles, all those type of functioning new types of desks, things that are on the walls that have to be dismounted, the TVs, all of these different items where you could actually have a separate crew to manage the install and reinstall of these items, as opposed to just your standard movers. Because you could have a large office move where you need 20, 30, 40 staff, and now you're relying on 2 or 3 of those guys that should be really foremen or leaders on that move to go, hey, I need you to start doing all the disassembly of all of these cubicles, or take all this stuff down, because you know that they have experience in assembly and reassembly. But in reality, you should have a separate crew and have separate people in charge of those installs and reassemblies.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's what it is. Instead of guys getting lost in the sauce, you're having your expert supervisor who you know has done this before and can get somebody through any of that, so it doesn't escalate to you, right? So you got their chain of command who's the expert, and then they have people that he can teach to do that, and you know exactly who does it, because he needs to have a staff or he's doing it all the time, right? So it kind of puts that accountability on that.
We recently hired Ready Rolls to help us with hiring some offshore help, some VAs, and they've done an amazing job. They found the perfect candidate for our company. Not only that, they helped answer the questions that we had about the process. Initially, hiring a VA can be a bit intimidating, but they answered all the questions. It's been an amazing experience. Our VA has been a huge part of our success thus far. We're actually in the process of hiring a few more right now. Definitely see them as being a key part of our growth and reaching our goals in 2025. And another game changer for our company. I'm confident to be a game changer.
Visit ReadyRolls.com. There is now a better way to scale.
Big shout out to Chris Sweet again. I had an opportunity where I could take a peekaboo at his org chart, and it was well laid out. And for a lot of us, and please drop your comments. I'd love to know how you each are building out your org charts, what software you're using, what works, what doesn't, what have you used that you found was horrible, what do you find has been an easy tool to build an organizational chart. He shared with us a program that's called 90.io, so it's spelt out the word 90
EOS
.ai.
Yeah, it's an EOS software.
Yeah, and I found it absolutely fantastic. It's affordable. It's not going to break the bank to make this effective, and I think there's actually
don't
free
stop
model
there.
on there.
That EOS too. Yeah, use the EOS
for
function
sure
on that. Yeah,
100%. But yeah, I found it fantastic.
Amazing.
Yeah,
it is
so
a great software.
I highly recommend it if you haven't built out a proper org chart, to go check out that. I find that we could talk about this for hours, Stephen.
I'll say it too. One of the things that you holler at me at Ready Rolls or DM me, one, I'll share my org chart with you, and would love to give you that insight. But yeah, if you DM me, reach out to us, readyrolls.com/movified. Right, reach out, and we're gonna have you can ask. I have a recommendation of how I would do org charts going from 1 to 3 million, 3 to 5, 5 to 7 with VAs these days. So would happy to share that too, that concept.
That's amazing. This has been great. To wrap this up in a bow, have an org chart, share it with your staff, find those right roles, and again, when you're tackling this, try and find the wins out of it. What is working, what doesn't work. We'd love to hear from you about it. You can reach out to Stephen Reed at readyrolls.com/movified to learn more. He has these documents readily available. And if you don't have a VA,
I feel like this is an intimate episode here.
Was it intimate? It wasn't even a Movified.
It might be the darkness. Either. I got a little, I actually just realized my light's not on midway through it, but yeah, I feel like it was a little intimate. It felt like a Movified nightlife one on this side.
I know. I like it. For all those that are listening, we always really appreciate it. You can always check us out on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, all those different areas. Like, share, comment. We always appreciate it. That's what kind of keeps us alive.
Ding.
And subscribe. Ding.
Ding.
Ding. Yeah. Right.
But subscribe, really. We put a lot of we put this out every Wednesday, and we try to keep it as fast as possible for you as far as information to help in your business.
And for all those that are listening, stay Movified. And until next time, thanks, Stephen.
Thanks.